This is genuinely insane. One San Francisco Giants beat writer and MLB insider reports that the Giants offered one of their top prospects to help improve the second base position at the big league level. We'll be breaking down that report here on SF Giants Digest. Before we do that, make sure to go down below and hit the subscribe button. I've noticed 82% of you guys watching the videos are not actually subscribed. It's completely free, just takes a second, and it really helps the channel out. So make sure to go down below, hit the subscribe button, and you will not miss any Giants news for the rest of the offseason. Now, what we're reporting on today is a report from Andrew Baggarly of The Athletic. Now, the first thing we saw was on Twitter. It says the Giants aggressively pursued shortstop CJ Abrams, but were unable to agree on a fair return with the Nationals, according to Major League sources. And when I first saw this, it made a lot of sense. We know the Giants have been extremely aggressive at the second base market with names like Nico Hoerner, Brendan Donovan, and a few months ago, even a Ketel Marte in talks to have been shown interest on by the San Francisco Giants. And CJ Abrams with the Washington Nationals recently shipping off Mackenzie Gore to the Texas Rangers. It is very clear that they are heading into yet another rebuild because their last one involving the Juan Soto trade did not end up working out. However, when you go into the full article by Andrew Baggarly, you get a piece of evidence that is very interesting when you're talking about the Giants and their top prospects. This is from the actual report. It says, with their options thinning out and just 2 weeks remaining before players report to spring training, the San Francisco Giants recently turned up the aggression to get something done on the trade market. According to Major League sources, they signaled their openness to include highly regarded teenage shortstop prospect Josuar Gonzalez in a package for Washington Nationals infielder CJ Abrams. Now, this is absolutely crazy. I genuinely thought that Josuar was one of the few untouchables in the Giants organization. As it stands today, I would have assumed that obviously Bryce Eldridge is untouchable, and then Josuar is untouchable. He's a guy that absolutely has the potential to become a top 10 prospect in baseball. He is just coming off of his 17-year-old season where he showed a lot of promise in the DSL. Now, I know it's the DSL, but still, some of the numbers he was putting up, some of the exit velocities he was putting up, suggest that at his age, he could become a top 10 to 15 prospect in the sport within the next year. Similar to a Jesus Mate with the Brewers, a Leo DeVry with the A's. He's on that trajectory and looking to become one of the overall top prospects in baseballs, and not just the number one prospect in the Giants organization. They haven't had a guy like this in a very long time. Now, outside of how crazy it is that the Giants offered up Josuar in this potential deal with the Nationals, what would CJ Abrams bring to the table for the Giants? Now, he's been an all-right hitter across his career. When you look at his total career, he actually has been under average at a 97 weighted runs created plus, or which 100 is league average for those that do not know. His career slash line is a 249, 306, 411. He was an all-star in 2024. In that year, he slashed 246, 314, 433 with a 106 WRC plus, launched 20 home runs, his only time eclipsing that 20 home run mark. Last year was pretty much the same year. A little bit better in the average department, but 257, 315, 433 for a slightly better weighted runs created plus, just 1 point better at 107, and then 19 home runs, 60 RBIs. So he really has done the exact same thing the last 2 years. The one thing I do like about him is the stolen base totals, 31 steals the last 2 years. 2023, it was 47 steals, so very athletic on the base paths, and adds that dynamic to the team if he were to become a San Francisco Giant. But as it stands right now, it is looking like he will not eventually become a San Francisco Giant based off the reporting we get from Andrew Baggarly. Now, when you look at this overall stat line, I come off very surprised that the Giants were willing to offer up Josuar for a guy like CJ Abrams. Bryce Eldridge, Josuar Gonzalez, they really are 1A, 1B in terms of the top prospects on the organization, despite Eldridge obviously being a lot closer to the Major League roster. However, I assumed they would both be in trade talks for, Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, like the best players in Major League Baseball that could potentially be available via trade. I would have assumed that those are the names that these guys would be included for, not for a CJ Abrams or anyone to include or improve the second base position for the Giants. The one thing about CJ Abrams that could make him, pretty expensive though, is the contract and the years of control. So he is just entering arbitration. 2026, he's only making $4.2 million, which for his production is actually a pretty good deal. When you're talking about a guy who's been 5, 6, 7 points above average in terms of offense across the last 2 seasons. He's an all-star in 2024. $4.2 million really isn't that much, and you have him for 3 years. He would not become an unrestricted free agent until the 2029 season. So you're getting a long time of CJ Abrams, which could help you understand why the Giants would offer up Josuar Gonzalez, because you're getting a lot of control from CJ Abrams. But I still think it is absolutely insane that Buster Posey was willing to float a guy like Josuar in this deal when you're talking about one of the best prospects this organization has seen in the last decade, if we're being completely honest. Now, when you look at what the Giants lineup looks like right now, I mentioned this in the Patrick Bailey video we did yesterday, but the top 5 or 6 are great. We love Jung Hoo Lee. Obviously, 2, 3, and 4 of Adames, Devers, Chapman is amazing. We like Elliot Ramos. We hope he takes another step forward after taking a bit of a step back last year. He was an all-star in 2024, of course. Obviously, Bryce Eldridge, one of the guys we've mentioned a little bit in this video, the best prospect this organization has seen in a long time. And then the bottom 3 is where things get a little dicey. We know Patrick Bailey's in their first defense. And then second base, you could potentially upgrade. Obviously, we know the Giants are being aggressive there, and that's where this entire conversation stems from. But Casey Schmidt is not the worst option in the world. I would prefer an upgrade in right field, give you a little bit more surefire offense and defense at that position. It's a glaring hole as of right now when we're talking about certainty. But I will admit, if you slide in a CJ Abrams where Casey Schmidt is right now, that does extremely, extremely lengthen your lineup compared to what it is right now. This lineup is seen, across the industry as being top heavy, which makes a lot of sense. We talked about the top 4, 5, 6 in this lineup. Bryce Eldridge is technically an unknown. We don't know what he's going to do at the big league level, and that bottom 3 is dicey. So he would shore up the bottom half of this lineup for the Giants, but it is still a pretty crazy idea that Buster Posey was willing to float Josuar in this deal, in this potential deal. And it was reported that the Nationals did turn this down, and we don't know if that's just because they didn't like the package the Giants were putting together. There were a few other guys mentioned in it, Johnny Level, Jacob Bresnahan, some other names, some other prospects that were talked about during these talks, but nothing came to fruition. Obviously, he is not a San Francisco Giant as of right now. One thing to mention is towards the end of this article, Andrew Bagley mentioned that the Giants will be, kind of listening on 2 names in free agency. One being Luis Arias, who the former second baseman, first baseman with the San Diego Padres, a 3-time batting champion, a guy who hits for a lot of average, but that's basically it. He would hit for 0 power at Oracle Park. And then another one was Harrison Bader, who we haven't talked about a ton, but he would be an interesting outfield fit to slide into that right field position. Very good defense, coming off of his best offensive years of his career, but some numbers suggest that it could be a bit of an outlier, and he might regress back to his norms next season. So that would be something very interesting to follow throughout the rest of the Giants' free agency. Now, before we get out of here, I do want to mention that today's video is brought to you by Kalshi. When you download Kalshi, the link below, and enter code DIGESTMLB, you'll get $20 when you trade your first $100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the United States, and you can trade on yes or no on real-life events such as sports, elections, news, pretty much everything in between. Whether you're in California, Texas, anywhere else across the country, Kalshi is live in all 50 states. For sports fans, trade on game outcomes, playoff chances, or player performances, all on a regulated market where you can cash out at any time. For example, we know the Seahawks knocked out the San Francisco 49ers, unfortunately, last weekend. The Seahawks do have the best predictions on Kalshi to win the Super Bowl at 40%. You can check out all of the updated NFL predictions on Kalshi.com right now. It's genuinely a smarter way to use your sports or news knowledge, and you can close positions whenever you want. Download Kalshi with the link in the description, and don't forget to use code DIGESTMLB to get your $20 bonus. Thank you once again to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. Now, before we get out of here, make sure to go down below and hit the subscribe button. Like I said, it really helps the channel out. And then let me know down in the comments what you think of the Giants floating their arguable top prospect for CJ Abrams. I think it's very insane that Buster Posey was willing to part with a guy who just entered the organization and could be a top 15 prospect in the sport within the next year for CJ Abrams, a guy who is a good player, do not get me wrong, but does not defend well and has been around league average in terms of offense for the majority of his career. He usually starts the first half very hot, and then the second half falls off a cliff, similar to the guy that just got traded from the Nationals, Mackenzie Gore, does on the mound. That's basically what CJ Abrams has done at the plate across the past 2 seasons. Let me know down in the comments what you think, and make sure to subscribe to SF Giants Digest.